Hey guys, this is Tobias. It's been a while, so a lot's been going on in real life. So I've been gone, busy with work. I also had a medical issue that kind of kept me out of the loop for about a month. Had a couple surgeries and stuff, but I'm recovering. Things are going better now. So anyway, that's kind of why I've been gone for a while, and I wanted to come back and do something cool for you guys. So that's what we have here today. This is my first video after all the chaos of life, really. So I've been binge watching House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones series show. I really like it. One of the things I saw that was kind of cool in there was the candles, how they use just a bunch of candles and some of the set design, and just how many there are. Just it's pretty wild that there's all that stuff going on. Now, I don't know if those are actually practical candles or digital or not, but it kind of raised an interesting topic. Obviously, a studio like HBO is going to have the resources to probably be really extravagant and do all that stuff and have that kind of stuff, and they have all kind of safety people on set and dealing with all that kind of stuff. But for people that don't have resources like that, independent filmmakers and so forth, the issue of fire or pyro on a set is a really huge one. It's a pretty big safety issue. It's a pretty big insurance issue. Even if you're doing guerrilla filmmaking, it's still a pretty dangerous thing to do. Even with just candles, people don't really think of that, but a few candles around sure is fine. But when you look at something like the House and Dragon scenes and the sets, you're literally looking at hundreds of candles, and you can imagine that if you have a bunch of people around, or your crew and your actors or whatever, and accidents are really easy to happen. I've seen it happen myself. Really easy to get into a lot of trouble pretty quick, but I won't go on and on about that. Anyway, it inspired this tutorial. I thought it would be a really cool idea to show you guys how to make digital candles that you can match to your set. Bring in a camera track into Houdini, and use sort of like an asset that you're creating where you can have digital candles that's a little bit lightweight. So a couple of caveats to this. This approach is meant to be for more of like wide shots that you have, and it's not really meant for close-ups. So with that in mind, we're going to keep our sort of randomness and variations to a minimum. As with most things in Houdini, we can get as complex as we want. We can do however photoreal stuff we want, and if we want to have like absolute every single one is a unique variation and all that kind of stuff, we can do that. But in this example, we're going to do a couple of shortcuts just for the sake of like I said, keeping that sort of wide shot intention in mind. Also, this is geared towards sort of like the little bit more intermediate beginner to intermediate. We're not going to be doing a lot of really complex like expressions and stuff. We'll use a couple of expressions, but nothing really super fancy. We're not going to be doing any wrangles or anything like that. So it's a pretty straightforward process. So most users of Houdini should be able to do this. Also, I'm not going to bring in a camera track, but the idea is that you would bring in a camera track, and then you're creating geometry from that camera track, from the tracking pieces. So like say you had a countertop or some kind of set piece that you wanted to match move, and the idea is that you would take this approach and sort of match that surface and cover it with these candles. Also, we're not going to be doing pyro in this, so we're going to cheat the candle flame with actual geometry as opposed to doing pyro, because pyro is expensive digitally, and it takes a long time, and it's more complicated. It's more complicated to set up and to get sort of unique pyro for each one of these candle instances is possible, most definitely, but it's a little bit more advanced than what we want to do for this kind of this project, this kind of intention. So there you have it. That's what we're going to try to do in this tutorial. So follow along and let's move on to the next chapter. We're going to start building some candles. Okay guys, in this section we're going to start building on our project and our candle construction. So let's start by creating our container here. It's called Practical VFX Candles, and what I generally like to do is try to organize my approach here for what I'm going to try to do, sort of like task management, if you will. Oops. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build the candle itself. Right, and then we're going to build a wick for it. Right, and then we're going to build an animated flame. These are our tasks for the construction. Right, so let's try to organize our network to do that and get a little prettier. Okay, so let's get started with the candle itself. Get back to our view. We'll start with a simple tube, and let's add some caps to this and some divisions because we're going to do some extruding and beveling. Now it is going to be meant for a wider shot, so we don't need a whole lot of resolution on our geometry here, so let's try to keep it simple. And alright, so the first thing we want to do is inset this top part. So let's do that with a simple extrude, and let's grab that polygon like that, and we're going to inset it just a little bit to taste and drop it down to where we want, probably something like that. Okay, and then let's add some thickness to the candle itself, so we'll do another extrude and grab all of these sides here. I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I'm not a master modeler, so forgive me for any sins. Just trying to get the job done, so to speak. Oops. Enter would be nice. There we go. Just add some thickness to the candle. That's probably sufficient there. Let's start working on our beveling here. Let's bevel this bottom. And we'll grab an edge. That, and then there we go. Bevel that a bit, make it a little rounded, add some divisions. There we go. That's a little better. And now let's address our sort of melty edge here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a group at the top here. This time I'm going to do it in viewport. And grab this and hit enter. Hit tab for group. There we go. Now we have a group. We're going to call this our group melted ridge. Change this to $OS. And now we have a target group. Let's clean up our network a little bit. And now we're going to use this group to do some noise on it. Let's go up to the top here, change it to position, select our group, and of course it's a mess. We don't care about the X and the Z, we do care about the Y. We do not need that much amplitude. We could, however, use maybe a little bit more like that, maybe even less. Or maybe the trick is, I do like the waviness of it, but maybe it's a little more amplitude. So let's try 0.2. Yeah, something like that will probably be good for now. And let's round this edge on the outside here. So again, we'll do a bevel. Get up to our selection, back to edge, and there we go. Done. And let's round that a bit, add a couple of divisions. Okay, cool. So there we go. We have sort of the shape of our candle. If you wanted to, you could do the inside bevel if you wanted, but this inside edge. But I think for the sake of our wide shot, we're going to be looking at it from afar. So up to you. Due to taste, we are going to need this center piece here to do our wick. So I'm going to do another group just to grab that. And it's just going to be this polygon here. And that's going to be our center. And I'm just going to call this target wick, because that's where the wick is going to go, and $OS, so it takes on the name, and that should be cool for the candle body itself. So a couple things thinking ahead. We're going to be using Karma to render, so I'm going to create a group that basically just adds everything, the candle body itself. So I'm going to use this Karma candle geo, and we'll see this later on. I'll explain why I did that. And if you're not using Karma or Solaris, and say you want to bring this into an object merge later on or something like that, easiest thing to do is just drop down a null, just create an output for it, and you could just make it easier for yourself to find it, maybe by using all caps, and there you go. Okay, so I've got my target wick, so let's go ahead and create our wick. I'm going to template this geometry here so we can see what's going on and move over to our wick section. Okay, easiest thing to do is start with a line, and there we go. So now we can see that it's sitting there on the surface. I do want my line to be the size of my candle, so whatever I decide to change later on, you know, the height and so forth, whatever, it'll sort of follow that. So I'm going to copy this height parameter and bring it over to, whoops, click happy over here, sorry about that, paste relative reference, and I'm just going to cut it in half because I don't really need it to be the whole width or the whole length of the candle. Okay, so you could change the points here, but I generally like to just do a resample. Oops. Resample, and let's say 0.75. That'll give me enough resolution there. And then I'm going to add some noise to this. I keep forgetting to hit tab. It's because I'm trying to move along here, keep the video from being super long. Okay, and there we go. And let's make it a little bit smaller, the noise, and yeah, there we go. So it's got kind of like a curviness to it, but that amplitude is really kind of crazy. We don't need it to be all that. Maybe something like that. Okay, and then let's match this up to our, you know, that melted center. So what we can do is use a match size. Let's do that, and we're going to feed in our geometry, and then we're going to go down to, you know, from our group, that target wick. I'm going to grab that and change our view to this. And the trick with this in the match size is your group is not going to show up here, but it will show up in the use groups to determine justification bounds. So let's do that, and here we can choose a target group, and we can see that we have our target wick, and now you can see it's created a bounding box over that target, which is exactly what we want. And that's kind of okay the way it is. If you wanted to, you can change, you know, where it's justified. I'm going to leave it at this for now, because I kind of like that. But let's sweep this so we have some actual wick geometry. That has to go before the what do you call it? The match size. Okay, so round tube, we want much less of a radius. We do want an end cap of a grid. Let's get rid of our points so we can see it better. Okay, there we go. Now that we have the geometry and it captures that for the match size, and it is in the right place. Awesome. Okay, so like with the body of the candle, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a group for this for my Solaris import. I'm going to call this group wick geo. There we go. I got all that, and change this to $OS. $OS. I'll take on the name, and for other workflows where I might want to access this another way, just do out wick geo, and there you have it. Now you've got it. Now we need to make our flame. So let's make sure that we have a selection on the wick for where we're going to attach our flame. So let's go right here, right after this match size, into another group. Let's take a quick look at that. And let's just say we just grab this top part of the wick, like say all of that, and that'll be our target for the flame. And $OS, so it takes on that name. Alright, and yeah, I guess it's fine. We can just do this and then organize it. Okay, now let's make our flame. I'm going to change our template to the wick, and for the flame, we're not going to use pyro. Like I said, we're going to sort of cheat it with some geometry. So I'm just going to drop down a sphere, and there we go. I'm going to change this to polygon and give it a little bit more frequency, and change the dimensions a bit. Okay, so I have that sort of like elongated shape there, and I'm just going to feed this right into a noise. And it's going to be position noise, obviously. And I did animate this, so let's obviously bring this down quite a bit. That's a little crazy. Simplex element size, maybe 1 point. We want kind of a smooth thing. I'm going to add a little bit more fractalness to it, just to give it a little more natural look when it's animating. Animation will enable this, and let's just take a look at what we're looking at. So we could slow this down if you wanted to, something like that, depending on whatever the turbulent noises in the room that you're trying to sort of fake. And okay, so cool. Now we have our geometry for, you know, a little cheated flame there. And now we're going to use our match size trick again, and bring in our target flame. And again, we're going to use the use groups to determine justification bounds and grab our target flame. And the flame itself is really big, so we're going to take this uniform scale and bring it way down. And maybe on this match size we'll let's just take a look where it's at. So we don't necessarily want it in the middle, we kind of want it like that. Maybe offset it a little bit if you wanted to, totally up to you. Probably not necessary, but let's go ahead and work on scaling this a little bit and make sure that it covers that. You know, even though from far it may not really matter much. So you can see there it is. It's just the flame is wiggling around there. Cool. Okay. So again, for our workflow, we want to be able to access this later on in nice tidy little groups. So let's just group that geometry, and we're going to call this group flame geo. This is going to help us in our Solaris workflow, and there we go. We validate that we have it, and use $OS to inherit the name. And for other workflows where we want to access it, say in an object merge or something like that, we'll just go ahead and use a simple null to do that. This just sort of helps us create a agnostic sort of workflow. We don't need to template this, but for the sake of visibility, let's take all these and merge them and just see what we got. It should all be kind of where it's supposed to be, and looks like it is. Let's just do a quick little playthrough. That flame looks a little small, so we could probably bring that up a bit. So something like that. There you go. Adjust to taste, and okay. So now you have the candle with everything organized. Let's go into that view real quick and just sort of take a look at what we're doing. So yeah, we have this candle, which is here. We have our wick, which is here, and we have our animated flame, which is here, right? And that's our whole little section there. We could take all of this before we move on to the next step and put an underlay there, and we'll just say this is our candle, just as a whole piece. It's fine. And let's do candle preview here. Or preview candle. It's maybe small, but just so you can see what I wrote there. And if you want, you can color code this stuff as you wish. And in the next section, we're gonna do the instancing on. Well, actually, we'll create different shapes just to sort of exemplify how we might match this up to, say, a camera match move, where we're trying to match it to a surface in a shot like that. So we'll create those shapes really quickly in the next section. All right, see you in a second. Okay guys, in this section we're going to work on creating our target shapes, but real quick before we move on, just wanted to show you a couple of minor adjustments I made. So in our original extrusion of this center where we lowered it down, I think I was a little aggressive on that, so I actually raised it up a bit, and you'll see why in a second. And also on the flame itself, it's probably best to leave this uniform scale to 1 and then change your radius manually here as you see fit. You'll end up getting a better shape, and it also, when you're using the copying to points, it will work better as far as scaling changes that you make. So I just want to let you know I made those couple of little changes before I went on here. Also, real quick, since we're here, you'll notice that the normals look a little weird on this. We can resolve that by using the lab's soften normals, and that'll make it look a little better for later on. Also, I did not create any UVs, so you probably noticed that for this, and the reason why is because later on when I'm going to render in Karma, I don't really need them for the simple principled shaders I'm going to use. That's just procedural shading. So I mean, if you wanted to use some kind of texture or something like that, you could, but in this kind of case, it's really unnecessary to do that. So let's move on to just sort of showing how you can use different shapes here. So, I mean, the real obvious one is just, you know, say you had some text, and let's just say this was candles. You need to rotate this -90. This is laying on the ground, and that's a bit small, so we're going to make this really big. There we go. Right, and then we want polygons only, right? Because we're going to scatter some points. Simple scatter in a line. It's usually the best thing to use for what do you call it? For copying. And we're going to do by a number of points. Let's say 1,000 points. So there we have our points. These are where all the candles are going to go, and our alignment should be fine the way it is, but yeah, we shouldn't have to make any changes there. What we are going to do is change the rotation angle, because this will add a little randomness to what we're doing, and that should be it for that. We are going to randomize the scale a little bit differently though, and I'll show you why. Randomize. Instead of using p-scale here, which is the convention usually, which it's already coming out of scatter online anyway. P-scale is a uniform scaling, right? So it's a point uniform point scale radius, right? We don't really want that in this case. We want to be able to scale by a certain axis. In this case, Y, because I just want to have candles of different heights. What you can do is just simply use scale here, and then in your dimensions here, the second one is Y, so we'll keep the original, which is the minimum value, and then say go to, you know, say a little bit higher height. And as far as the X and Y, we just, again, we want to keep the original and not modify anything else. And then from there we can do a copy to points. These points, we probably should put a null here. And this is the out preview candle, or just, yeah, just out preview candle. I'm just going to do that because I already have an out candle for the candle body. Right, so I'm just going to pipe that in there. And there you have all of our candles. And they're all different heights. And you can see the wicks are a little, or the flames are a little kind of crazy. But again, we can adjust that by using our scale adjustments here, either on the sphere itself, if you wanted to, which this may be fine. And because these are all rotated different ways and all that, you have, you know, the appearance of randomization. I will caveat that each one of these candles is actually, as far as the noise is concerned, and the edge is identical, but because of the rotation and the scaling and the height, you know, from afar, like I said, as a master shot, it appears, you know, random. And that would be sufficient in a situation like this, right? We're not trying to do really advanced kind of crazy stuff here. Okay, so there we have it. That's just, you know, an example there. If you wanted to use, you know, where you were trying to shape match something, you could, you know, say create a curve and then, you know, match to that. I already prepared something ahead of time, so I'm just going to grab that just to save you guys the time, because I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me create, you know, vector graphics, right? So I created that a little Batman curve, so I'll show you that. I just simply drew this in Houdini, fusing the points together, because the curve tool does create duplicate points in some cases in corners, and then I would convert that to a polygon just to be absolutely sure, and then I'll transform that in my case to just say a larger size, and then that would go into the scatter, right? And then there you go, and now you have candles on that kind of surface. So it's really kind of cool for doing that. Now, like I said before, your alignment might need adjustment depending. So this is reversed. That didn't fix that. Okay, so what you could do is just go into the scatter and line and go into the alignment and change your target vector to Y. Nope, that didn't fix it either. blend normal with. There we go. Okay, blend. That's what I was thinking. Blend it with the Y. Okay, and then that will, if you set the amount to 1, it'll just make it to where it's absolute, basically. So there we go. All the candles are pointing in the right direction, and that may come up for you depending on what you're doing. So in this case, our symbol was sort of backwards. Whatever. We could have easily flipped it, but whatever. It's just another way to do it. Okay, and you could, if you had, you could also just draw a curved shape. So say you were trying to match, the contour of a surface, you could do that, and then you would use like a poly expand to create that shape. And again, I'll show you that real quick here. I have another example off screen here. So say you just had a half of a circle, you just poly expand that so you have a polygon, and then you feed that into your scatter line, and again, because we did the blend with the y-axis, this is what we get. And one more point to note on this is when you are using copy to points, in order to keep the groups that we're going to use later on in Solaris and so forth, you have to uncheck pack an instance. Now, depending on the size of your scene, this may or may not be a huge issue. Like, I don't have a ton of primitive sim points here. I mean, this is pretty lightweight. It's about 500,000 points, and this is 1,000 candles, I think. Yeah. So, even if I used, say that bat symbol, I mean, it's still 1,000 points, so whatever. Right, so it's about 500,000 points, 3/4 prims and so forth. But anyway, the point is that in Solaris, you're not going to get access to these groups for shading if you don't. If you use pack an instance, it'll destroy the groups. And if I do recall, yeah, I don't think there's a way to promote that from the copy to points node. And there may be another way to do that. I just don't know it off the top of my head. So I'm just trying to make this quick and dirty for you guys. So there you go. And then that would be, you can have, a series of different shapes and feed all that in, and now you have, candles that are mapped out to that, and all of those flames are animated. So you would probably cache this out, do a file cache before you went into Solaris, but each one of those flames is animating, and because it's all rotated different ways and different heights, they're all going to look a little different, and obviously your camera angle is going to make the big difference there. Okay, so in the next section we are going to bring all this into Solaris and set up some quick materials, and I'll show you how to just get a quick render out of it. Okay, I'll see you in a second. Okay guys, in this next section we're going to get into getting all this set up for Karma in Solaris. First things first though, let's sort of clean up our network a bit. So these are our sort of target shapes, right, that we did. So let's put all this into an underlay there. And let's put target shapes. That way we can move that up. And as far as the copy to points, we should just feed this into a null so we can easily pick this up visually and copy right in Solaris. So this is our viewing stuff. All right. Let's move up, and I'm going to drop down a LOP network. You could just hop into Solaris if you want, and I probably should do that for the sake of just good workflow process. So why don't I do that? Let me do it proper. So let's change our view up here to Solaris, and now we have a blank stage, right? And I'm going to do an import. In this case, I'm going to do an import all, just to grab it, and there we are. We have our stuff. Now, I was saying before, the reason why we created those groups that you saw By default, when we do an import, if we look in our graph tree, we can see that, yeah, it brought in our geonode with the PFX candles, and it brought in the mesh, and we have our geometry, but we don't have the actual elements themselves. And the reason why is because we can't really see the groups. So we need to enable that in our import, in our geometry or import data. There we go. This little option here for subset groups, we have to enable that and then put an asterisk there. All right. And you'll see something magical happens is we get all our geometry subsets, right? And so now we can access these in our Solaris context, our network, when we're doing things like materials or modifications to the geometry itself. So great, that's fantastic. So now let's just go ahead and just jump into creating some quick materials. And like I said, I'm going to keep this simple. We're just going to use the simple principled shaders here. Now you can do what you want. You can use Material X, whatever your heart desires. I'm going to keep it simple for the sake of this video, and just make it quick and dirty. Alright, so I've created 3 little shaders there, and for the wax, let's just say I'm going to change that to the base color white, because I'm actually going to use subsurface scattering of 1, and let's get this sort of waxy color, something like that. And the distance is a little high for something this small, so these candles are relatively small, so I'm going to lower that distance. That should be sufficient for that. And for the wick, let's just go with like a nice little sort of charcoal black there. We don't really need any shininess there. And then for the flame, we don't want any color in there, but we do want emission. And again, this is just going to be sort of a simple setup. If you wanted to get more advanced, you can create, like, say, a point gradient on the flame itself, where you have a range based on the Y height that you could access through a color attribute, so that this emission would be based on point color. So say you wanted that sort of hotspot up to a different color, we could do that. But I promise to keep this simple, so that's what I'm going to do. So once we've created that material library, we're going to clear everything out here and just autofill everything. So now we have our 3 materials, and now we're going to assign them. Excuse me. Alright, so the easiest thing to do here is, when we're looking for things to assign to, we could just control click this arrow over here, and so we're looking for our primitives. So my first primitive is going to be my candle geo. I'm going to select that, and my material, again, I'm going to control click here, and I have my materials folder, and I have the wax material, and hit OK. You can see the viewport updated a little bit there, and then I'm going to add another material and do the same thing. Rinse and repeat. I'm going to grab my primitive, which is the wick for the second one, and control click for the material path, and I'm going to look for that wick material, and then add another one, and control click, and I'm looking for the flame geo, which is this one, and again, materials, flame, okay. And I should, let's create like a little let's say a dome light or an environment light, whatever. See, could probably just grab a texture here. Yeah, there we go. Just something for the sake of viewing. Okay, and you can see that we've got all that there, and let's clean up our network. Let's throw it on a Karma node. And let's just take a look. See what happens. Alright, there we go. Let's adjust that color and the wax. Single scatter, maybe that's what the deal is. Nope. Yes. Yep, I think that's what's required for Karma, and also I think the random walk works. Yeah, that should work too. Okay, and then yeah, I guess we will use the base color here. Let's just make this a little, there we go, something like that. Sort of off yellowish, maybe a little closer to red. Anyway, this is minutia stuff, and I don't want to bore you with all this, so there you go. That is our quick and dirty setup, and you can see that we have our candles, and like I said, if you were to set up a shot, a camera move, say it was matched. Let's turn this grid off, it's a little distracting. You could match that up. Say you had a camera track that you wanted to bring in, and there you have it. Now you've got your stuff. So just for the sake of just sort of giving an example of if there was an actual grid geometry or some kind of geometry that you wanted to bring in, you could do that. I could have brought in the bat shape if I wanted to, but didn't really want to in this case. So like I said, just for the sake of example, there you have it. So it's on whatever surface, counter or whatever that you're trying to match up to, and those flames are animated, so you would render that out as animated frames, animated camera, or just let the camera track that you brought in do the animation for you, and there you go. Right? So nice quick and dirty setup. Let me just stop moving around here and let this actually finish somewhat for you, so you can sort of see what's going on. And of course you could add lights and whatever to match your set lighting. Hopefully you'd have HDRI from the actual set. That's typically what would be done, is you have your cinematographer or whatever, or director of photography, they would do a 360 HDRI of whatever set you're looking at. And as far as the lighting is concerned, the typical trick that you'll see for things like this when we're doing light effects or things where there's flames or emission, like some kind of special effects on set, you'll have like LED strips, or the sort of like rope LED strips that are put on a surface or in the shape of the thing that we're trying to create digitally, and you'd have that hooked up to like a flicker switch or something like that to do all that, so that you have actual practical lighting that matches on set without the tons of flame here, or in this case 1,000 candles on set. That's gonna potentially have an accident or something. So there you go. I think that was it. I hope I made that sort of quick and dirty for you guys. I know it was a lot, but hopefully you found some use in that. And again, you can modify this and adjust it to your heart's content. It's a quick and dirty solution, and I hope you found it useful. Alright, I'll see you guys the next time. Take care and have fun.